Welcome back to the Business of Livin podcast. I am thrilled to welcome my second guest here on the Business of Livin podcast, David Hancock. And David is a great friend of mine. He's also a pretty successful guy, and I've learned a lot from him. So I am thrilled to have you here, David.
Well, it's a privilege to be here, Michael. You know how much I love you and all the things that you're doing. So when the call came, I'm like, yes, sign me up.
I love when you say that. Just want to tell the listeners a little bit more about who you are. Founder of Morgan James Publishing, named after your children, right?
That's right.
Co-authored 12 books, authored 19 books total.
Right.
President of the board of the local Habitat for Humanity, chairman of the board of the National Center for the Prevention of Community Violence. And Morgan James is a fantastic publishing house, responsible for several best-selling authors and books, including The Millionaire Messenger by Brennan Burchard, .com Secrets by Russell Brunson, The Bezos Letters, Performance-Driven Thinking, which is their latest success, written by none other than
David Hancock.
Absolutely. So I am pumped to have a conversation with you, David, because your heart and soul behind everything you do is based in generosity. It's based in giving and offering value. And that's where I want to start our conversation today. When were you first encountered? When did you first have your eyes open to this concept of giving and of generosity?
You know, there's probably multiple points that God was teaching this to me over the last, 50 some odd years. Some of it was kind of put in business in the early days, but it was all around the same time. So probably from a biblical perspective, my parents instilled in me, the idea of tithing and giving the way that God intended, because everything we have is given to us by God in some aspect. So, our responsibility to tithe to our church was instilled to us. I wasn't necessarily always really great about it, but I understood it and saw my siblings and my family and my parents do it well. And then from a business perspective, I started to learn the power of giving just in my quest to make myself better. Probably learned from Zig Ziglar, Tom Hopkins, others, Jay Levinson, the Guerrilla Marketing guy, who he and I became dear friends. In fact, most of my co-authored books are co-authored with him in the Guerrilla series. I learned a lot about the power of giving in those aspects. The more we give, the more we receive, the more we help others realize their goals and their objectives, the more our goals and objectives are going to be made. So it all fits perfectly. But one story in particular that really set it forward for me, if you will, was one day my bride and I were in church and we were tithing, maybe not exactly perfectly, struggling, young married couple, didn't have necessarily extra cash lying around. But the pastor compelled us. And it was, that time of month where every month they do a sermon or something to kind of remind you, hey, don't forget to give.
Right.
It's a cliche, but that's what we're supposed to be doing. So he challenged us. It was amazing. He said, I challenge you to give a great speech on doing the tithing aspect. And he challenged us. He said, I challenge you, if you're not tithing now, to start doing it and start doing it exactly the way you're supposed to. In fact, he said, I will give you your money back in 90 days if God doesn't give it back to you first. And I'm like, wow, this guy's nuts, but wow. But that's what the Bible said, that's what it said.
Right.
So we accepted that challenge. And sure enough, before the end of the 90 days, we were able to find extra money. Money came to us above and beyond what we had tithed. And it was like, wow, God's coming through. Because a lot of it, certainly some money may be expected money, and that's great. We got our paycheck on time, or whatnot. But something out of the blue, or access to cash that we needed that didn't know where it was coming from, and all of a sudden that path opened up. It was phenomenal. So from then forward, our commitment was, even when it's uncomfortable, we're going to keep on doing this.
David, I remember when you told that story. We were in Franklin, Tennessee, at Dan Miller's place, and you stood up and shared that, and that rocked me, because at the time I was giving when I could, but this was a couple years ago. But it really invited me into a deeper level of giving, and that led to a whole lot of other things happening. So I'm grateful that you shared that with me, because what it actually led to from there is my wife and I, Lydia, consistently giving no matter what. And
Awesome.
that led to us being able to start a school in Pakistan, which continues to grow, and we continue to get to offer more money to that. And so I have to thank you for sharing that story and also following through on that commitment at your church. I mean, that's outrageous, right? That a pastor would promise to pay that back in full. I mean, that's a guy that's putting his money where his mouth is.
Yeah, and I did talk to him subsequently, and he said he never had to give any money back. Imagine that.
That's incredible. It's such an important conversation to have, though, because there's so much baggage around giving and the church, right? A lot of people feel like it's been mismanaged or used in the wrong way, or they see rich pastors on TV with, I won't say what color hair, but with big hair and with promises if you give money, and it's gotten soured, right? This whole idea of generosity and giving. And I love that you're bringing this fresh message, this true message that when you're generous, that comes back to you
Yeah,
shaken down, pressed together abundantly if you choose to do that.
yeah. And my philosophy on what those leaders in the church do with the money is outside of my control, has nothing to do with me. That's between them and God. And humans, we're imperfect. We're going to screw up. They're going to screw up. That's just the nature of who we are.
Yeah.
But our responsibility is to give. Who we give it to, obviously, is suggested in the Bible to give to our church that's serving us. But what they do with it is, it's outside of you. You're obedient in giving, and God's going to bless you for doing it. Even if it's mismanaged, even if it's buying airplanes, even if it's doing things that you might not think is what God wants to do, that's between the church and God. That's between that pastor and God. That has nothing to do with me and you.
Yeah.
We just have to be obedient, and we will be blessed.
Wow.
Not might be blessed. We will be blessed.
Okay. So it sounds like it has more to do with our hearts, the giving process, sometimes than it does what that results in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's also a lot of folks that would say, okay, that's nice. David, you're a successful publisher and an author, you can give, but times are tough. I've just went through a pandemic. I'm pinching my pennies. I don't know where society's going. I don't know where the economy's going. I'm hunkering down here. I can't spare to give anymore. What would you say to someone who's in a place like that, where they're holding on to everything and worried about what's going to happen to them financially?
Well, it's not an easy place to be in. So you really just have to kind of sit back and realize, okay, I have an obligation to give because that's what God has asked me to do. How can I do that? It doesn't always have to be money to start with, by the way. Certainly God wants us to get uncomfortable so that he can bless us, so that we can realize the blessing is coming from God. But it doesn't have to be money. It could certainly start with being time. You could serve in the church in some aspect. You can serve, or even just from a family perspective, give more time to your family, put the phone down and have conversations with you, bring the people back around the table for dinner, give your time, or even just your knowledge, share your wisdom, serve on the board, something that where your experience, your passion, your enthusiasm can help others. Give that to start with. Now, here's a great example. When we first launched Morgan James, I had this compelling feeling that I, as a corporate entity, need to give back to. And I felt really, really strong about that. And of course, it is certainly a guerrilla marketing principle that giving is one of the best guerrilla marketing weapons you have. So I'm not stupid. I mean, I understand there's so many different powerful levels of giving, but I wanted to choose an organization that I could be proud of, that wasn't going to offend anybody or alienate anybody, because I'm trying, I want to be as inclusive to the world as possible. So I chose Habitat for Humanity as our corporate sponsor. Now, in my heart, I'm like, this is great because, I was a mortgage banker. I was a home builder before I was a banker. My bride and I bought our first house at age 20. I'm a big fan, been raised, home ownership was, where we need to be. So it made sense to me. I didn't care if it didn't make sense to the publishing world, because I love community and home ownership develops community. And I loved Habitat because, they don't give houses away. They sell houses to those who need them, usually it's low income, usually a single parent, but they sell them to them at just the exact construction cost, and they finance it for 20 to 40 years at zero interest. So they give them a hand up, not a handout. And then, of course, our donations help build the next house and so forth. But here's where I'm going. So I'm like, okay, brand new publishing company. We don't have a history of revenue yet. Minor detail, right? And I'm like, I go to Habitat and I go, I don't have any money to give you yet, but I love you and I want to support you. But I know that in your bylaws, you said that you need people to give money, you need people to help raise awareness, and you need volunteers. I'm like, well, sign me up for number 2, and I hope to get number 1. And trust me, I will do number 3 is the next opportunity I can volunteer. And it was so funny. And this is where sometimes you feel the world working against you. So I'm having this conversation with Habitat International, big boys, and they're like, that's wonderful, Mr. Hancock. We're so grateful. If you just commit to writing us a check for $600,000 a year, we'd be happy to partner with you. And I'm like, I don't have $6 to give you right now. I mean,
right.
And so I'm like, well, how do I do this when I just have this beginning? But I'm a relationship person. And the guy on the other line was on the phone ended up being very gracious. He says, we appreciate you. He says, why don't you develop a relationship with your local, affiliate? And I'm like, well, that's the one I know. I called you because you're their boss. But I'm like, yeah. So I went to our local affiliate and said, hey, gave them the same speech. I ain't got nothing to give you, but I have a great idea. But I also want to help raise awareness and then eventually funds. And yeah, let's have our staff volunteer to build a house. And they embraced us, open arms, absolutely yes. And if you ever have money, that's wonderful. But if you could just help raise awareness, that's what we need, And it enabled us to be able to give at the level that we could, which in the beginning was nothing but awareness. And then as we continued to grow and started to be, profitable, heck, we were given before we were profitable. But as we started to get revenue in, we could afford to make donations. And of course, our staff, once a year, not since COVID, looking forward to getting back, but once a year we would go and we would volunteer and raise walls and swing hammers and things like that. Really, really a lot of fun. But my big point for saying all this was it didn't have to be money. It got there, but it didn't have to start there.
Yeah, I love that because when you think of giving and you think of generosity, you immediately, I immediately go to money. How much money do I have and how much money can I give and how much money will the person I'm giving need or what they value in this season of life. So I love that different approach. And Lydia and I try to take that same approach too when we don't have large amounts of money to give away. Sometimes just having somebody over for dinner and cooking them a meal and speaking into their lives could be a real gift to them.
Absolutely.
And I love
you as well. And you as well.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. That's the thing, right? Is when you give, that's not a one-way transaction. That you both parties benefit from that immensely when you have that spirit of giving, and it inspires other people that you give to give back either to you or someone else too.
Yeah. And planning ahead and being prepared for that opportunity to give is something that's really awesome. My wife does it best, I think. She will typically carry around with her in her car a stack of little gift cards. Yeah, usually a certain set amount, nothing too crazy, but nothing that they can't do with. And she'll see somebody on the side of the road that is asking for money, or she'll the Holy Spirit will draw to her somebody to pay attention to. And I tell you what, if we don't do it immediately, we're like turning around 5 miles down the road saying, I've got to go back. But she's always ready. She's got that gift card. Now, once she releases it to them, just like we talked earlier, it's between them and God what they do with it. But the idea is, be prepared. Doesn't have to be a lot. $5 gift card for McDonald's or something like that will maybe help them in some aspect. And, having that mindset of always being prepared for it was a wonderful lesson I learned from her.
Yeah, I think this is such an important conversation because I know that for myself, when I thought somebody who I was giving to was not going to use it well, that was my justification for not giving.
Whose justification?
Mine, right? I convinced myself that,
right.
Well, that's a reason not to give. But I love this perspective of, well, that's not up to you. It's your responsibility to give. And then what happens after that is not necessarily your responsibility. That changes things for me. I'm learning something right on this call right now.
You're welcome. That's my gift to you, brother.
There's the perspective of giving. in your personal life and, in your community, and thinking about, okay, with the abundance of my income, how can I then bless some other people?
Mhm.
But I hear you talking about doing that on a professional level too. If you're a business owner, actually taking the business revenue and taking a portion of that and giving as well. What does that look like? And how can a business owner think through giving in that way?
Look at it this way. I'll put my business cap on right now. So think of it
Yeah.
from a guerrilla marketing aspect. So, there are 200 plus guerrilla marketing, we call them weapons, that we can use from our arsenal to make ourselves more effective at creating opportunities for clients or customers, things like that. So one of them is giving, which I love that Jay Levinson was able to identify this and share it in the books that both he and I have co-authored in the books that he's authored over the years. But look at it this way: two identical businesses, and this is from I believe a Roper study from not too long ago, where two identical businesses, two identical widgets, two identical services, reputation, sales reps, everything's identical, if you will, of these companies.
Okay.
One company doesn't have a giving policy. The other has a giving policy, and it's slightly public, meaning people know that they give back to their community in some aspect.
Mm.
The unconscious mind, 90% of the unconscious mind would rather do business with a company that's giving back, that they know about, because a lot of times companies give in secret. And that's good, that's fine. But just from a business perspective, if they know that you're giving, 90% of the decision is already made in their head. I'm going to go with that company. Just
Right.
from the aspect of that subconscious feeling that we all know giving is a good thing. And again,
Yes.
if that giving doesn't alienate the population, it certainly could be better. So giving to certain organizations may create more of a chaos with you, but that's between you and how you want to give. But generally speaking, if you've got a benign gift that can affect a community or something like that, and people can see it and appreciate it without boasting too much,
Mhm.
it can have a significant impact. And again, it doesn't, like I said, with my habitat relationship, it doesn't have to be money, but it certainly can be.
Mm.
But that it's all about that principle of just standing out and not being self-serving. I learned a lot from my mentors, Zig Ziglar included, about the more you can help others realize their goals, whatever they may be. It may be in your clients' relationships, or it may be in the community, like I do with Habitat, or it may be some other aspect. But the more you help others realize their goals, the more your goals are going to be met above and beyond.
Yeah. How ironic, right? The more generous you are as a business, the more that you bless other people, the more that you give of your time and your resources, the more successful you're going to be.
Yeah. I challenge you to try to outgive God. I'm just saying.
Not going to happen. Yeah. That's fantastic. Well, I want to talk a little bit about this book that you're coming out, because you've put these concepts together in an incredible way. And I've been reading through it and getting so much value out of it. Yep, mine's right here. It's all marked up. I have all these pages bent over. Tell us what brought you to the point of saying, hey, I got to put this in a book and I want other people to read about these concepts. How did you get to that point? I mean, putting a book together is a serious operation.
Yeah, it is. And I partially blame you, brother.
You're welcome.
No, thank you. That's your gift to me. Not that you're needy or anything, but no, I'll tell you the backstory. So this book is part of our performance-driven thinking series. My co-author Bobby Kipper and I have this concept about performance, because we're going to perform every day, whether we're going to perform poorly or we're going to perform greatly, which is not a word, but we decide one way or the other. We're either going to perform well or we're going to perform poorly. And so we came out with this concept called performance-driven thinking in the book prior to this. And right book, right time, lots of cool stories of how it got started, the delays, the challenges that we had about getting that mindset out there. It ended up hitting the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. It's just been a phenomenal book, which opened up not only our minds, but also our audience asking for, well, where else can I be a stellar performer in my life? So as we were putting together, potential outlines for future books, because I'm always thinking, I teach this to our authors, is we always want to think 2 products ahead. Where can you lead your audience to go down to where they need to be to attain the goals that they need to be? But also from a business perspective, once they know, love, and trust you, they're going to want to have other resources that you have. So always be thinking 2 products ahead. But it wasn't until that you alluded to it a minute ago, that one meeting there in Nashville with the mastermind with our group that we're in, random question by our facilitator, Mr. Dan Miller, asked me about, why do you give from a business perspective? And for whatever reason, the floodgates just opened up, and I just started to ramble. I shared my story with the pastor. I shared my habitat, and I think he probably was looking for a 1 or 2 minute answer, if that. And I think I talked for 40 minutes. I'm like, oops, I'm sorry, but hey, it just started to flow. Yeah. And it created such great, engaging conversations with you and others in the room that I just started to well up inside about that concept. Got back to the hotel that night, and I literally just burned pencil to paper for an hour and jotted down, oh my gosh, I should have said this. Oh, I need to talk about this. I just wrote an outline. Yeah. You realize, okay, performance-driven giving is where we need to go next. So then met with my co-author, met with my faith publisher, and just kind of really started to flesh out what does that look like, and how does it, and just started putting the stories together. And then met an amazing writer to help me bring it all together. And it started because somebody asked me a question that just hit right at that very moment. And it wasn't quick. It's not easy to write a book. If it was easy, everybody would do it. But that's also part of the reason why books are so powerful. Everybody wants to write a book, but few do. Few that start, few finish never get picked up by a publisher. And if you look at the real stats, less than 2% will actually ever make it into a physical bookstore. So we got lots of things to overcome in the months to come. But the outline came together. But year plus in the making of writing it. It's a process, but it worked out, and I'm very, very, very honored of the final product.
Well, we're all glad that you saw that process through, and you not only can write about this concept, but you live it in your personal life, in your friendships, and in your business. And so there's nobody else I would want to hear this message from than you, my friend. So thank you so much for sharing this. Well, you have a little bit of go ahead.
I just want to add that though we have talked a lot about the spiritual aspect of the giving side, the book is really a business book. I talk about the spiritual, so my foundation, but we do go deep into the business side. We've talked a little bit about that today, but don't think I'm going to be preaching at you the whole time. I think chapter 2 is where I kind of lay down the biblical foundation, but the rest of it is how, where to give, when to give, how to deal with non-givers, and how to overcome those challenges. And it's just, I think you'll love it. Well, I know you do. I appreciate that. But
yeah, absolutely. I know people listening will absolutely benefit from that. And you have a little surprise for the people listening today, right, David? You mentioned something earlier.
I do. Yeah. So in spirit of giving, because like you said, I do want to practice what I preach. Oh, wait, I just said I wasn't preaching, but you know what I mean. It's a phrase. I have a gift for your audience, should they be so bold to take it. I know, right? So if you want a copy of the book, I'm giving it to you. If you go to performancedrivengift.com, that's performancedrivengift.com, you can get a copy of the ebook, and you can just download it right at your Kindle, your Kobo, your Nook, whatever device you like. But I have an ask. I ask you humbly, if you love it, tell all your friends. If you don't like it, we never had this conversation. Now, truth be told, I know you're going to love it, but please, and also have some great resources. If you go to performancedrivengiving.com, I've got an action guide to help you implement some giving ideas in your own world. You can download that. Also, something really cool that came of this book, and you may know this a little bit, Michael. In our history as a publisher, we've always done unconventional things. And I think we've really done an amazing job changing the publishing space. But one of the things I thought was really cool that we did, of course, because we did it, was that in the spirit of giving, anybody who buys a print version of a Morgan James book can get the ebook for free. That's always been our philosophy. We want to give a little unexpected, a little more than they're expecting. I guess that's the same thing. But we also know that it's not always possible to take every single book on an airplane that you might want to read or have access to while you're on a trip. So here's the ebook for you for free. Now, we do ask for their name and their email address during the process. So we do ultimately want to develop a relationship with these readers too, of course. But when this book came out, we changed it up a little bit. Now, anybody that buys a print version, including this book, you can not only get an ebook copy for yourself to have for your convenience, but we stepped it up. We said, okay, anybody who buys a copy of a print book can also give an ebook copy to a colleague or friend. Just one, but just give it away. Yeah. So we call it the Morgan James BOGO, which is buy one, get one, or buy one, give one. And the cool thing about that is it gives you an opportunity immediately to start giving without any skin off your back, but to immediately feel the power of giving by giving the book to a colleague, somebody that needs it. So we've seen phenomenal relationships pop up from that, press, opportunities, unexpected things, but all boiling back down to that giving side. So in my spirit of giving, I want to give you so you can give to others.
That's really cool. I love that. And generosity is just flowing through every area of your life. And that shows, David. Thank you so much for sharing about generosity and giving. I learn something every time I hang out with you.
We should hang out more.
Some bad jokes, but I forgive you for those.
Thanks. I need that.
But I sure hope we can get back out on, is it Highway 12? That is actually a sand road on the edge of the beach in the Outer Banks.
That's right.
Yeah, I hope we can take another ride and go the whole distance down there in your Land Rover.
The weather was a little extreme that day, so we couldn't go but so far. But I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much, David. Make sure you get this book. I mean, this is a huge, huge giveaway. The book is awesome. I've been reading it and just eating it up. So go grab it at performancedrivengift.com and give David some love. He is making a difference in this world. And thank you for listening to the Business of Livin podcast. Have an awesome week, and we'll see you next time.